and welcome back to Community IQ. I'm your host, Garrett Bunnell, and again, looking forward to a special presentation. With us today, our special guest, Mr. Jason Neverett, talking about the power of thinking, how to be a critical thinker. So remember, to engage and to encourage, building up versus tearing down, voices of our community, Community IQ. So at this time, I introduce Mr. Jason Neverett.
It's good to be with you.
Good to see you, my man. Always good to see this guy, and always good to have a good conversation. So, we're going to jump right on in, my man. First of all, we want to know what has shaped that mind of yours. Where did you grow up? Who were those influences? Take it away, Jason.
Great question. So, let's start with taking a look about back in the past a little bit to who influences our lives and who shapes our thinking. I think today we have lost the ability to think. We are waiting to be programmed, and we're waiting to be told what to think instead of how to think. So we can look back at different people in our lives over the years, maybe a coach, maybe a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, and see how they may have influenced our life. But when it comes to thinking and building our belief systems, which creates a behavior or action and that produces a result, we have to look deeply and hold ourselves accountable. Are we thinking, or are we waiting for someone else to tell us what to think?
Yeah, it definitely sounds easier, the last part, easier to be told what to do versus to think what to do.
Sure. I mean, it's always easier to be a mental midget, if I may use that term.
Okay. I always laugh when I hear the word midget.
Quite honestly, it takes work. Thinking takes work. So let's examine that for a minute. Do we sit in front of the television and let the news tell us what to think? Do we find ourselves operating from a position of fear, of limitation, of scarcity, because we allow other people to tell us what to think? Or do we connect with Source? Do we connect with God? Do we connect with our Creator and develop what He's created in us? Free will and the ability to think. As a man thinketh, so is he.
I absolutely agree. I mean, if we're talking about knowledge, if we're talking about the foundation of it all, I got to go to the inspired words to Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, when he said, "The fear of the eternal is the beginning of wisdom." It actually goes on to make more comments: knowledge, wisdom. And of course, I look at knowledge and wisdom as in knowledge is the accumulation of information, and wisdom is knowing how and when to use it. So, hey, I'm right with you, my man.
Yeah. Take a minute and just examine this thought for a minute. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves.
I'll keep breaking that down now. I like where you're going. Keep breaking that puppy down.
Okay. So let's go back to our BS, which stands for belief system.
I was going to say barbershop.
Okay. Well, we have some great conversations in this barbershop. And you know what? That's all about community. The great conversations aren't in the bar. They're in the barbershop. And we have some great ones sitting right out there in the lobby, don't we?
Every single day. That's what keeps me coming back.
Yes. So you're adding value to people's lives. You're having conversations. And we should never underestimate the power of a great conversation / great story. I mean, you have folks on this show all the time that have a great story that add value to people's lives. And so often we minimize that and we exchange it for cheap forms of entertainment. We allow an artist to tell us how to think about political, social, and family issues. We allow a local politician on the county, state, federal level to tell us how to think. We allow the newscaster to take 3-4 minutes in just a news bite, a segment, and tell us how to think. Which does what? The more we think on something, it becomes a belief system. That belief system produces a behavior. That behavior produces a result. We end up getting frustrated with the results in our life. We feel we're on a merry-go-round, going around and around endlessly. We don't like our results, so we go back and we attack the behavior. We attack the action. We feel motivated briefly. We go back into the same results. We don't go back far enough and attack the belief system or the thinking that created the belief, that created the behavior, that created the result.
Like pulling up a weed just by the leaves versus getting that root?
Exactly. So great point. Takes me to this. God created us with free will. He gives us dream seeds. He gives us things we become passionate about, things that we need to do with the purpose of our life. It is our job to cultivate ourselves into fertile ground so that those seeds can take root, produce fruit.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I'm thinking, what if I'm a young man or older man, young woman, older woman, and, I cannot seem to find my talent or my gift, or I struggle with that. To build upon something, I got to know what I'm building with. I mean, how would you start a person to encourage or help motivate on that path?
Well, I'll use myself for an example. All right. A legal pad and a pencil. First, establish who I am. Secondly, establish whose I am. Lay that groundwork and then begin to write out what you desire and what you have for the purpose that you want to accomplish for your life. And write it out in the tense that it's already existing. And then pull it, manifest it into your reality by the way you think, meditate, and pray on it.
One step at a time. Am I hearing that Rome wasn't built in a day?
Nothing worthwhile comes within a day. Anything worthwhile is an uphill climb.
So you're talking about not an easy thing.
Not at all. Not at all. Because everything we're programmed to do is to surrender what God created us to do. Because there's two competing forces for your mindset. There's two competing forces to dominate your life. You're a spiritual being. You were before you took physical form, God knew you. He knew you in the womb. You are a spiritual being having a physical experience for a period of time. When that physical experience ends, you return to spirit. The question for a lot of people is, where will that eternity be? That's a conversation for another time. But my point is this. Whatever you think upon, you will become. You sow evil thoughts, you will produce an evil life. You sow thoughts that are just and pure and lovely. I think it's in Corinthians somewhere. In ancient scripture, it talks about that.
Oh, whatever is lovely, whatever is pure, whatever is noble, just, and good, think on these.
There you go. You see? So, it doesn't matter how you approach this topic from the sense of what your personal faith may be. Okay? What religious activity you may practice. The point is, if you seek, you're going to find. If you knock, it's going to be open. If you ask, it's going to be given. All of that is action. All of that requires us to move in a direction towards a higher purpose of what to do with our life. It does not require us to submit and surrender God's greatest gift to us, the way He created us, with free will and the ability to choose. With that comes responsibility. With that can come reward or consequences. It all revolves around how we think in what we think upon.
Yeah, what you reap, you sow, cause and effect. It's not a respecter of anybody, is it?
No, it's not. No, it's not. It actually makes things an equal playing field.
We went over power of choice, one of the previous podcasts, and I really think that's the pinnacle. With all God's creative ability, he didn't want to create robots. And from everything I've researched when it comes to a character, and before I make this comment, you sparked a memory when you were talking about thoughts and actions that lead to responsibilities. I remember a very wise saying, and I hope I have it right. Thought leads to action.
Thought.
Action leads to habits, and habits lead to character. You familiar with that?
Yes.
All right. I love it, and it's so true. So I really do. I look at Earth, from everything from a biblical perspective here. Earth is like a giant training obstacle course. And the power of choice, absolutely a pinnacle thing that God has given us, and actually the spiritual realm, another conversation. And if we can choose to do what is right, no matter the environment, no matter what we're facing, we're building character. And that character is something that truly does last forever. And it's something that can't be created. Everything I read about, you can't just create character. It has to be a choice. So I'm right there with you. Continue, Jason Neverett.
Well, you said something that was interesting, and I'm remembering as you're talking when we were sitting here in the barber shop. We said all action, every action is preceded by thought. Pick up a cigarette and you smoke it, you have a thought leading to make you pick up the cigarette and smoke it.
Yeah, I want another shot of nicotine.
Whatever it is, all action is preceded by thought. And a man who can control his thinking and master it can change his life. And I believe he does that by connecting spiritually with a higher power, with God. And he finds his purpose, and he walks and leans into it. Look at this example for a minute. Think about something you want so much, something you desire to have so bad. All you can do is think about it. Maybe when you were cutting hair for somebody else, you thought about having your own shop that you ran, that you own, yourself, yours. And you thought about it. You envisioned what it looked like. You even envisioned who your clients were going to be, maybe where it was going to be in town. But you weren't there yet. That was in your future. But because of how you thought about it, you took it from the future and manifested it into your reality. Take that one step further. You know who's excellent at this? Brides. Now think about this. I agree. Think about this. You talk to a young lady who's about to get married. She'll tell you about her dress. She'll tell you about what the bridesmaids are going to wear. She'll tell you what centerpiece is going to be on the table. She'll tell you what the tablecloth is. Now, back in my day, they had like a book and they cut pictures out and glued it in there or whatever they did, okay? And they lugged it around with them and they changed things. They took it out and they kept refining that thinking process of a future event. And then they pulled it into their current reality when they got married. You can do that with good thinking and you can do it with bad thinking. But you'll do one or the other.
Without a doubt. No, I agree, but my mind went to, are women better chess players? Can they think many moves ahead more than the man?
I don't care to have that conversation. I have
to the future.
Idea what the answer is. That, yeah.
Oh, but definitely a purpose. That is definitely purpose driven.
Absolutely.
It works. So, when you're talking there, my mind keeps going to the battle of the mind. Whether we're aware of it or not, there's a lot going on in this world. You said two forces pushing at one another. It kind of brings up a question that I've had in the barbershop lately, and that is, was some atheist. And I enjoy having that conversation. I get excited when I have an atheist or a communist It's a great challenge. I like a challenge. And that is, well, if God exists, why does he allow all this suffering? But Jason, you said it. In a world where we have the power of choice, God could have stopped Cain from killing Abel, could have stopped a lot of things, but how would we learn the lessons of where bad choices and good choices lead us?
You make a great point. And listen, I don't pretend to have all the answers by any means, but I know this. I seek, I knock, and I ask. So the truth's not going to be withheld from me. Usually what happens is the truth is already there within us. And we have to go on a journey of growing our awareness to be able to see it and to receive it. You can't receive something with a closed hand. So think of your mind for a minute being in the palm of your hand, okay? And everything you're holding on to and your fist is closed represents what's in your mind that you've been taught right up to this point, no matter how it's been programmed. From your grandma, from the news, from a university professor, from a religious leader, whatever. And you're holding on to it as your belief system. Okay? Get that visual. All outside and around your fist are other beliefs. Okay? What do we typically tend to do? We look at those beliefs and we judge them harshly because they're not in the palm of our hand. They're not in the box that we've created in our thinking. Instead of receiving it and processing it and adding it to our truth or removing it. Listen, I'm 54 years old. My belief systems have changed from when I was in my 30s or my 40s. We are human beings. We're in the constant process of becoming and growing. This is interesting because, you talk to people about personal growth and development, all right? And a lot of them just don't get it. They'll spend $5 a day at Starbucks, maybe more, $20 a week, I don't know, $100 a month, easy money on the plastic or however they do it, right?
Sounds but like if my financial investor.
But if you said to somebody, I'll sit down with you in a one-on-one relationship and go through this book, this study guide, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, written in the late 1800s, and I guarantee you by the time we're done with this, you'll be walking in a new direction. You'll be hungry to find your purpose. You'll start to reevaluate what you're holding on to. Do not hold on to something, a limiting belief, that does not serve you in getting to your preferred purpose in life. We do it all the time. We do it physically, we do it spiritually, we do it financially, and then we call it our comfort zone. And you know what it really is? A casket.
No, I'm with you. In fact, this is where my mind went with that, and I'm glad you ended on that note there, because what are we afraid of? Because I found, working with so many different personalities over the years, and you come across a lot of good phrases. Barbershop University is what I call the barbershop. And that is a hallmark of intelligence is being able to entertain and try to understand other people's beliefs without giving up your own.
Absolutely.
It's like a compromising without compromising your principles. But if we're here to learn, what are we afraid of? No, I find that it takes courage to step out and to think about the other person and serving, because you know what? What's not important to you doesn't mean it's not important to them. And if you want them to respect your opinion, you're expecting a miracle unless first you respect theirs. I find that's where the hallmark of a good conversation begins, is showing respect. And chances are you're going to get that respect back. But I like that. Keep on going, Jason.
Well, you make an interesting point, and I think a few weeks ago when we were in here talking, this story might have come up, but I'll take the time to tell it to your audience now. Just really dial into this thought. Never underestimate the power of a great conversation, because if anything else, you should leave by learning something about yourself at the end of that conversation. Something should come into your awareness to help you grow. And we're always in a continual state of growing. If we're not, I think somewhere in the New Testament scriptures it says something like being like Luke water and I spit you out of my mouth. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to twist the passage up.
We're talking about classic Laodiceanism, my man. No, another conversation, because that's a deep subject, buddy.
Okay. So, but you see where we're going? We're having a conversation. In if I could look through your forehead right now, there should be sparks going off, like cylinders, like the old spark plugs, and I'm just getting excited because now that I've sat here in front of the mic for a few minutes, which is not a normal comfort zone for me. Okay, it's required me to grow and step out of what's comfortable. I find it comfortable to walk in here, sit in your barbershop, and just talk with strangers. And next thing you know, we have a 30-minute power conversation, and people are leaving, raising their hands,
Are you
cheering.
suggesting we should take the microphone out there? Keep
an
an
we
open
might.
mic
We
10
might
hours
just,
a day?
Think of that. Think about filming a half hour at your barbershop, just telling people, hey, we're just having a conversation. It's going to be up on YouTube. But anyways.
Put up the signs. But connections.
Yes.
Right? Building a relationship, all about connections. And so when you made that comment earlier about identifying or learning something more about yourself, not just that person, yourself. No, I find that's absolutely the case. I find that there is an energy and an excitement in a conversation. It doesn't have to be a said thing. You can feel it. You can actually feel it. You know when somebody's paying attention, when they're not. At least I've been attuned to that, I guess, just working with so many people. It's kind of like, when somebody's looking at you, you can feel that. Another conversation. But anyway,
right. And
the more you can recognize yourself and other people, and I don't mean comparing. No, because that's an immature thing. It's an immature thought to compare or to say that I'm better than. But to actually recognize what we have in common. And I don't mean you like motorcycles, I like motorcycles. Yeah, that's a surface deal. But to say that you have struggles that you want to overcome, the journeys that you go on, to be able to say, okay, how can I apply that to my life? And I find it's just exciting when I hear people tell a story, because it's like, what adventure am I going to go to next? But to make those connections, to be able to identify with the other person, without a doubt, a building block of a relationship.
So the question comes up, why are we lacking authentic connection with people today?
Well, I think first we got to recognize who we are. How can you recognize who somebody else is if first you do not recognize who you are?
I opened with a statement. We have to know who we are, and we have to know whose we are.
Full circle moment.
And that begins to help us define our purpose. And our purpose has to be bigger than ourselves, right?
Absolutely. In fact, if you listen to, lack of a better word, a lot of smart guys out there that communicate, guess what they have in common? Happiness is not about what you can do for yourself per se. It's always, how can you help others? It's more than you. More than you.
Right. So here's a story for you. I think it was 2000, maybe 12. I forget. I'm in Herat province on the border of Afghanistan. That's the northwest province on the Iranian border. We're about 50 miles off the Iranian border. We were at a quote-unquote Air Force facility, an Air Force facility off the border that was sending up drones and so on and so forth. Now, I was working for a private security firm, government group type. Okay, so I had about 12 or 15 of us Americans. Okay, all former military guys, now working in the private sector. We had about 750 Afghans in our camp that were from all over the country of Afghanistan. So I want to paint a picture for you. Some of these guys had little to no education. Some of them had more than others, depending on where they were raised. If it was down near Kandahar City, they had influences from India. If it was up in the northwest part of the country on the Iranian border, they had Persian influence. So they had different imams, they had different religious leader, they had different education levels, just like when you travel around the United States and meet different people. Okay? There's two examples I want to make in this story that are powerful for what we're talking about. The first being this. in a negative light. We had to control every bit of information and every bit of life sustainment they required. Do you know what I mean by that? Food, water, and shelter. Because we were grossly outnumbered. Okay? Now, they traveled from all over the country to work for us, to be trained by us for what we were doing for the government at that location. But at any given time, if they chose to, they could overrun us. It would be a great cost of life to them, but eventually we would lose. 12 against 750, do the math. How many hours or how many days does that last? So you could sow intentionally, you could sow seeds of disinformation. You could control water. You could control food, shelter, in order to keep them divided so they could not unite and turn against us.
Are we talking about a foreign country here?
Yes. What do you see happening in our own society today?
Well, I see a lot of fear. I see a lot of oppression. I see weak leadership on purpose because I know this. Strong leadership produces strength and hope and a vision. And I don't see an interest. What's the word I'm looking for here? Not an interest. I don't see that as a focus to want to provide hope and vision for the people, not just in our own country. I see that around the world as like a main message, like agenda.
Correct. So to continue this story, to make the second point, I'll say this. We're out on patrol one night. We're changing out the guards, bringing in those who had been on shift for 12 hours, bringing the next group out. Okay? The rain had settled. It was cold, wet. The ground in that part of Afghanistan is like walking on the moon. It's just dismal. Nothing's out there but shale and dirt and grime. It's been raining all day. But the night was getting to be very beautiful. The sky was clearing. Lots of stars. Now, I have night vision goggles on my side. And I have about 15 guards, and the truck that was supposed to pick them up was late. Everybody's getting cold and angry, and, you probably have 10 or 12 AK-47s. I have my interpreter with me, and we're talking. And I just noticed the spirits are down. They're not happy. They're ready to go back to camp. They want to get out of their wet clothes, call it a night, right? Just like anybody would. And as I'm looking at them, my interpreter starts to tell me that they're missing home. They're missing their place of worship, okay? They're missing their families. So at that time, for whatever reason, there was a connection. I go over to them, and through my interpreter, I have them all line up and lay down on their backs. Now they're looking at me like, this guy is nuts. Okay? I have them lay down on their backs. And I'm going to give them an opportunity to do something they've never done up to this point in their life. I take my night vision goggles and I let each of them put it on their heads and look up at the stars. And if you've never had night vision goggles on your head on a clear night when all the stars are out, with your naked eye, you say there's millions. When you put night vision goggles on, there's billions.
That's awesome.
Now, each of them were overwhelmed. I mean, just could not believe that I would let them do this, because they're not supposed to have a sensitive item like night vision goggles. No, I didn't give them to them to keep, okay? But they put them on and they looked and they're talking to each other. They get excited. One of them has them on. He falls down on his knees. He lifts his hands up and he starts praising Allah. He just starts giving thanks for something he sees that was so beautiful and powerful. He was overwhelmed.
Just like leadership, or any good leader should do, provide night vision. Metaphorically speaking.
Absolutely.
Because you can see more than the average bear, and the whole goal is to get other people to see a bigger picture. I like it. Continue, please.
So what did he see? He saw the truth. He saw something bigger and greater than himself, something of more purpose than what we were doing for our governments out there at that time. It was just a great experience. It was humbling for me because as an American former soldier in that country, working for a corporation that could be paying you anywhere from $15,000, $18,000, $20,000 a month, and the person you're training, fighting with, might be making $300. Okay, to give them an opportunity to see something they've never seen and watch how it changed their spirit, their attitude, the connection that was there. And I could go on about the story, but the point is this. There was a connection by being aware of a situation that I could impact and give somebody an opportunity to see something they've never seen before and have that experience. That person didn't have to believe or think like me. They didn't have to worship the God that I worshiped. They didn't have to have the cultural training that I had. They didn't have to believe in American values or any of it. But there was a connection there to take a step in another direction and begin to build a relationship.
Well, what went on from there, buddy? Because I think you were encouraged too, my man, and that's what something good does. Everybody wins. So where did that go next? How long were you over there? And, of course, you know the question I really want to ask, what were you guys doing?
Well, I was there for 4 years. I was in Afghanistan for 4 years, and I worked for several different private corporations or government groups. Most of the time we were training Afghans, in security. We were providing logistics. We were providing camp security. We were providing convoy security, personal security details, anything that involves securing people or a facility, patrolling. A lot of these facilities were in the process of being constructed under nation building. I refuse to call it a war on terror, but that's just my own personal experience. So while these facilities were being built, they had to have security. So that's a lot of what I did. The last contract I was on was a little more sensitive. It involved subterranean threat. So for lack of a better term, tunneling. People who were tunneling and trying to get under facilities and create mayhem. So we had to go find them and encourage them not to tunnel anymore.
So back to vision. You got a chance to really spend some time with these people, get to understand how they think. What was that bigger vision they had before you started to get into the metaphorically speaking night vision? What did they see of the future? I mean, because the only influence, and like you started off in the beginning, the programming of the mind, what did they see as the future? Where did they see things going for their country? I don't know if they thought about the worldview. I mean, what was that mindset?
The mindset that I saw in Afghanistan from the Afghan people, and let me just say this. I've worked with people from all over the world because war zones bring people in from all over the world. I've worked with people from Kenya, Nigeria. I've worked with people from Haiti, from India. I've worked with people from all of the former Soviet bloc, Bosnia, Croatia, Yugoslavia, many folks from all over. It becomes a melting pot, of people from all over the world. As far as the Afghan people who, I'm just going to say, richly and deeply impacted my life, in a wonderful, wonderful way. It showed me, it caused my own internal great awakening. It was an experience I wouldn't change for anything, because it made me start to question how I've been programmed, both in politics, in faith, and in finance.
Yeah, because they didn't have a Democrat versus Republican. Again, what was that? What was that worldview? That future vision? Where did they see things going?
Well, I'll say this: we don't have a Democrat and Republican. That's just been the facade they've put on for 150 years. But that's a conversation for another day.
Are you talking about two wings of the same bird?
I'm talking about It's one bird and it's not healthy and it needs to be eradicated. But anyways, I'll just say this. The American people have bought into a sideshow for the last 100+ years of a two-party system that's supposed to be, fighting for different political views, but it's really a one-party system going off the same cliff at different speeds. And you can't have a one-party system in this country blatantly and openly until today. Now we find ourselves there. But back to Afghanistan. So what you asked me, what did they see in their future? And here's the sad thing. 100% focused on daily survival. Very little vision, very little hope. Most of the people that I worked with were my son's age, in their 20s. From the time they were birthed, they had an AK-47 in their hand. Not a school book, or very little, I should say, but were experts at things involving survival, warfare. When you live your entire life and you find yourself in your mid-20s and all you've known is either civil war or foreign occupation, what type of vision do you think that puts inside of you?
More war, or you can only focus what's directly in front of you because you're too busy trying to survive.
Absolutely. I've seen children fight over a bottle of water. I've seen adults freeze to death for just lack of common shelter that we take for granted here. I've seen power grids go down and generators not run. I've seen it all.
Well, you talked about 12 to 15 people trying to keep an organization or keep people calm, 750 Afghanistans? My mind goes to all these past examples of people being in slavery, people being controlled, and you're talking about a people that outnumbered those controlling them by far. But it makes sense. I mean, if they're busy working, if they're busy surviving, it's a lot easier to control.
Absolutely. And that was the negative point I was making. You can control people by creating division. You can control people by controlling their health care. You can control people by sowing a false narrative. You can control people by limiting their right to exercise their faith. You can control people by causing division. What is different about Garrett than Jason? That's what I want to focus on, instead of focusing on what you and I have in common. Because if we focus on what we have in common, we open up creativity. When we open up creativity, we walk towards abundance.
Which is an energy, and back to that connection. Again, this is where my mind goes. If we're focusing on what connects us, that's an energy. Then we're looking on what we can build, without a doubt, versus what we can tear down.
Absolutely. We should have a great conversation in the near future about energy. I mean, it's in all of us. It's in everything, and we don't harness it, and we don't use it properly. And when we figure that out by changing our thinking, we can do wonderful things. When we connect with the source of all energy, God, when we co-create our purpose for our life with God, which He wants us to do, we have a part in it. We have a part in it. So let me just take that in the direction of what we were talking about with Afghanistan, right? I told you they focused daily on survival, but yet they could be so creative, and they were so willing to share with one another everything they had. So I would go into the DFAC, the dining facility, and I would fill my cargo pocket with hard-boiled eggs. I'd be walking out of the place with 2 cargo pockets. I don't know. I think I could get 25 hard-boiled eggs in each pocket, right? And I would bring them out to my guards because the company that provided their food basically gave them chicken broth. Okay, not anything much more than that because they wanted the big margin on the food. Okay, but I don't want to get into that. So I would bring them some hard-boiled eggs. Now these guys would come off from working, and they would sit around in a circle. They would open up a blanket, and whatever they had, they put out on the blanket, and they all shared it. I just thought that was wonderful. Now, I'm not trying to paint a picture that everything was perfect and everything they did or thought was perfect. I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm trying to do is harvest the good. Okay? And there's many things we look back on our lives, and you asked me to say, hey, who influenced your life? Who was a key person that helped you develop your thinking? Some things we have to do with our past is harvest the good and release the rest of it. Put it in its place, deal with it, and release it. Harvest the good and move forward.
So I'm a young man, and I see all these things going on around me. All I hear is doom and gloom. I'm told that I have to be motivated. I'm told that I should be nicer to people, but I really don't like what I see. And now I'm depressed, and I feel like I have nothing to offer to society. How do I start that road on believing, wanting to discover who I am and how I can help others? How does that process even begin?
I believe it begins with a mentor or a life coach. Absolutely. Now, you may find that mentorship with someone in your inner circle. You may find that direct connection with a coach in your high school or a leader in your community that you're connected with. But a lot of times people don't have that because we haven't been taught to forge meaningful relationships because it takes work. It takes work. You know, birthing a relationship, a friendship, or a business arrangement with somebody is very similar to a woman giving birth to her child. It's messy. It takes work. It's hard. They call it labor. You know what I'm saying?
I've never thought about that in that context.
You know, I mean, they call it labor, okay? And I would say to a young person, I used to have some parents who would come to me and say, hey, I'd like you to talk to my son or my daughter about going into the military. They're not sure what they want to do. And I said, okay, the last thing you want them to do is go into the military because someone else thinks they should. If they don't think they should, they're going to be in for a world of disappointment. It's the same thing. I used to tell my daughter, don't go to college just because your friends go to college. Go to college because you want to, and you know your purpose and what you expect to get out of going to college. But you don't have to put outside pressure of what someone else is doing into your life. It's not going to serve you well.
I hear a lot, and good advice, I would say. I just want to add to what we all hear a lot when it comes down to find what you enjoy or what makes you happy, and you'll always be happy the rest of your life. Like it's one thing, because what I found with people is what you do doesn't define you. You know, I'm a barber or a doctor or a carpenter, whatever. No, it's how you do something. So I find if you got the right mindset going in and doing anything, no, you're going to have that enjoyment because that purpose is greater than what you're doing, but it becomes how you do it. You with me on that, Jason?
I agree. I think most people...
You can do 1,000 different things, in other words. Okay, so Jason, you could be a military man. Jason, you can be a builder. You could do this. No, what defines Jason? Not what he's doing at that time, but how he does it.
We need to get to a point where we don't let our circumstances and our conditions define who we are or our past. So when you talk about the young person, and you mentioned when you started about inspiration and motivation. Inspirio is the Greek word. Inspire, from within. Motivation is from without. And I think when we were sitting out here last time talking, we were talking about the drill sergeant. He can motivate you real quick, right? I mean, he's going to show you what you can do, what you think you can't do by motivation. Inspiration comes from within. And when we have to look at what our purpose is for our life, most of the time we surrender that journey for what's expedient. Usually based on what someone else has told us, what we can or can't do, or can or can't have.
So I'm hearing a cheap substitute.
Sure. People look for a cheap substitute from the hours of 6 p.m. until they go to bed because they have no fulfillment for what they do during the day. They just have a void. They go do something because they can do it, not because they want to do it. Or they go do something because they have to do it. And it's not what they want to do. And so what do? They come home. They're miserable. They disconnect from the primary love relationships in their life. And a lot of this goes back to how we're programmed. A lot of this goes back to how we're taught to think about things. We're taught, do well in school. Go out and get a good job. Do it for 40 years, and when you're done, they'll give you a watch. And then you move to Florida and eventually die.
Well, I'm reminded of the scripture that says, for lack of knowledge, my people perish. And where there is no vision, the people perish. I mean, personally, and of course, when it comes to leadership. And then, of course, it comes to mind, the truth really does set you free. What does real truth bring to the equation? It's life energy. That's what's inspired. Solomon actually said, it is life energy. It fills you completely up. It gives that inspiration to do more than what you think you can do.
When you have passion and purpose, you're able to accomplish a lot of things in your life, as long as you're not letting someone else do your thinking. That's your work. That's your creativity, your imagination. People worry about things that haven't even happened in their life. They think about something that could happen. They dwell on it. They worry. They get internally sick from it. They get depressed. And the event hasn't even happened. But how they choose to think about it, they're manifesting it into their body temple. They're living it out. And it hasn't even happened. You can turn that, and you can use your imagination to create what you want out of life. And if a young person sits down with me and they start talking about, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know what I want to be, they haven't figured out their purpose. They may not even have figured out who they are or whose they are. So they don't even know how to begin that journey. You know your friend that was in here with a salesman. I won't mention his name, but the salesman, right? He said something interesting to me about his goals and goal setting, okay? And I asked him a question. I said, what's your growth plan? You told me your goal plan, but what is your growth plan? Because if you don't have a growth plan, you're more than likely not going to hit the goal. But if you do hit the goal, there'll be no fulfillment because you haven't become who you need to be when you receive the reward of that goal. Now think about that. If somebody says, this is what I want out of life, then I say, what are you willing to become?
Yeah. How much effort? What is it worth to you? How much effort are you willing to put in that situation? Without a doubt. I get scriptures running through my head, so I'm just going to spit it out.
Let it fly.
And this absolutely did preserve me in life. I mean, if somebody asked me the question, how to think right? Well, I am. Everything comes through a biblical view. When I was 19, that's really when God called me, opened up my eyes. Very thankful of that. I remember going to my parents, and the first thing I said is, God calls the weak and the base to confound the mighty. I'm the weak and the base. And there was a scripture. And like any truth, Jason can tell you that, the Bible's real. Anybody can say the Bible's real. What does that really mean to the person? Not much. If you're talking about being a critical thinker, the power comes in when you prove it for yourself. God says many times in his word, test me at this, try me. Yeah, go right ahead. You want to see if the Bible's true? Put it to the test. But there's a scripture that talks about commit your works to the Lord and he will establish your thoughts. Again, what does that really mean? Where's the power of that? I put this to a test. Anybody listening right now, give that baby a try and tell me you don't have the results you're looking for. You don't know where that direction's going? Jason Neverett said, consult, mentors, coach. And I know in this day and age we live in, had a discussion in the power of discipline with Jordan Burkholder, the need for mentors. and how he was encouraged. And he actually said that, yeah, it takes work, but guess what? Everybody wins in the situation. When you see that young man putting forth the effort and having those results, you yourself are energized. So everybody wins, kind of like working out. The more effort you put in, you think naturally you're going to be tired. No, you actually get more energy. It's the opposite of what we first see. And it goes back to, oh man, I just had this thought. Hang on, let me get back to this puppy because I was holding on to it.
Okay.
I was holding on to it.
Take your time.
And that is, this happens. Okay.
Let me read a quote. You
read
think
that
on
quote. I'm going to get right back
right.
to you. Go for it.
Listen, I love this quote by James Allen in his book, As a Man Thinketh. And my mentor is Paul Martinelli with the Empowerment Living community. And one thing I've learned over the last few years is we should start asking ourselves when we meet somebody, hey, what book you reading this month? And just watch the look they give you. You have to feed your mind. You have to feed your soul. What you're putting in. What are you dwelling on? What are you thinking on? What are you meditating on? Meditation is powerful. I'll give you an example. Everybody do this tomorrow. Just take this quote from Jesus and think about this quote tomorrow and see how it impacts your day as you meditate on it when you interact with the girl at Publix, when you go get your hair cut, wherever you're interacting with people in the office place. Just think of this. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Even the things that we don't do in the physical realm, how we perceive somebody, how we judge somebody. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. But here's the quote I want to share with you. And I'm going to break down a couple keywords. And if that thought comes back to you, just go like this, and I'll stop and you run.
Actually, I think this is where it's going, so continue,
okay.
My man.
All right, so here's the quote. The vision that you glorify in your mind. So now let's stop right there and talk about the word glorify real quick. Take the word glorify and think of sacred or something that's important or something that's significant. Now remember, this author is writing this in the 1800s. The language is a little different than what we use today. So stay with this. The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal. What do we think of when we think of ideal? The idea that you love. Okay? The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal, the thing that you're in love with, that you enthrone in your heart. Let's look at the word enthrone. Fortify, protect. So you're going to have this vision, you're going to have this ideal that you're going to protect and fortify in your heart. It's in your mind. This you will build your life by. Word build, work. This you will become. Becoming is a journey. It's not what you get, he's saying. It's what you become. Remember we were talking about goals? The purpose of setting a goal is not what you obtain. It's what you become in the journey of going for the goal. So here's the quote without interruption this time. The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build your life by. This you will become. As a man thinketh, so is he. What are you dwelling on? What are you meditating on? Fear, division, anxiety? This you will become. Look at what we've become in our community right here in Eustis, Florida. By letting other people dictate and control what God gave you, your free will, your freedom of choice.
And I think that it did spark that memory again, because many studies have been done, and it talks about how important is to have that knowledge, right? You talk about having that goal, right, to what you're going to become, but having the right knowledge. That's what you're talking about, putting good things in to get good things out. And naturally, this is how we're built, absolutely purposeful. And that is our first response to things that we do not know is actually negative, right? When we talk about insecurity, we talk about that worry or somebody is being defensive. Why? Because they do not know, or they're not having that proper vision, or they're thinking too much of themselves versus thinking about the other person. And I like to say serving. I'll tell you what works for me, and it will work for anybody, because if I can do it, anybody can do it, if not better. And that is, when you think about serving, when you think about that other person, things work out. I don't care who it is, as long as they're open to something. There's definitely personalities that are going through a lot of hardship that don't want any interaction. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, day-to-day people on the street, in the store, you name it. And so, yes, fear. How deadly is that fear? How deadly is it to not put good things in your mind? You're naturally going to be walking around with insecurities. You're naturally going to be on the defensive. You're naturally going to be afraid of what you do not know.
We have a tendency, go back to the fist analogy. Your fist is closed. It represents everything that you developed in your belief system. And you just said it. You just said we have a tendency to fear anything new, because it's going to require us to make a decision. It's going to require us to release something that is not serving us well. You take a look at limiting beliefs, okay? Things we say over and over again to ourselves that we would never let somebody else say to us, ever. We'd get defensive. We might strike them. We might get up and leave if somebody was saying some of the things to us that we say to ourselves and replay in our mind over and over and over again. You're a failure. You're a dummy. You don't have the right education. You can't have a business. No one in your family ever had a business. Over and over again. Your teacher. You don't score well on your grades. You can't do anything in your life except this, or this. Come on. You are connected to Source. You were created by God. You have an inheritance in His kingdom. You have a purpose bigger than yourself that only you can live into, that only you can manifest it into reality. And He wants to co-create that purpose, that vision, those dream seeds that He's put inside of you. You need to create the fertile ground. You need to clean up the mind. You need to think on those things you mentioned earlier that are mentioned in Scripture. And you need to move forward into that purpose. That's where the fulfillment is.
Be bold, be courageous. Everything that you're describing is effort and being courageous, because all those things I do believe to be true. Or we can be fearful, or we could just not put forth any effort, and we can experience the same thing we've been experiencing on a daily basis, or we can be courageous and say, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. What is there to lose? I mean, this one road where it's leading, and you might be comfortable in it, but do you not want more? Do you not want to become something greater than what you see before you? Absolutely. But it'll only be a reality if you put forth that effort. But how do you get somebody at ground zero, Jason? How do you get somebody at ground zero to make that first step? In fact, I've been asking every guest that has been on, what is the number one way to motivate the youth today to take that first step?
I don't believe you can make anybody do anything.
To encourage that first step.
By leading them. By leading them. People, young people, middle-aged people, old people want something to follow. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Even if they don't clearly know what that is, it's within all of us. We want to be part of something, going somewhere and doing something meaningful. You can't make a young person or anybody do anything they don't want to do, but you can change yourself. You can begin the process of growing and developing a better self. It's required of us, I believe. It's required of us by our Creator. Look at it this way. I've been married 32 years, okay? I can't make my wife do anything. She can't make me do anything, okay? But we can work on ourselves. Just the energy of working on yourself and reading and growing and having conversation and knowing your purpose and walking towards it creates such an energy and excitement that eventually the other person doesn't want to be left behind. They want to be involved with it. They'll start their journey of growing, seeking, knocking, and asking. It starts with yourself. If I sat down with a young person today and I just wanted to start getting a sense of where they were at and what they wanted to do, I'm going to get into their imagination. I'm going to ask them to start creating the impossible in their thinking. And then start building a process to realize it's not impossible. It's very possible. If you're willing to become what's necessary to have that or be that. I mean, you can apply it to anything you want. Look at Muhammad Ali. Look at any boxer in the ring, okay, who willingly goes into a ring to get punched in the face because he wants the belt. He wants the prize. And we watch the fight for however many rounds it goes, and we jump up out of our chair and we cheer, but we don't see the daily work of what has to be done in order to become the champion.
So get comfortable with discomfort.
If you're comfortable, you're not moving. Comfort is the enemy of achievement, in my opinion. And what's sad is you hear people use a lot of different languages involving that, whether it's out of a university, whether it's out of a religious institution, whether it's around the Thanksgiving table. Because one thing's for sure, when people don't want to change and grow and move forward in their life, they don't like being around people who do.
Holds them accountable?
Yeah. And, it makes them have to take an inward look. How many times do we cheapen? And I really mean this. How many times, even with humor, but how many times do we cheapen someone's success journey with things like saying, oh, they must have got lucky, or his dad had money, or he's a trust fund kid, or whatever. And we don't know the story.
Right. Excuses for his success.
Yeah, excuses for his success. And we tear it down because we haven't been willing to do what he's done to get what he has. I'll give you a great example today. I'm at racetrack filling up my car. All right. I decide to go in and get those little donuts, and I really shouldn't, but I pull up my car to the front of the store and I park.
Be careful. Your wife might be listening, Jason.
Yeah, she could be very nearby. Okay. I get out of my car, coming out, and this is right here in Mount Dora on 441, coming out of the store, and I'm going to take a guess. This gentleman had to be in his 80s, and he had a military hat on, and he walks over right in front of me. He walks right in front of me, and he gets in a brand new Mercedes convertible, and he hits a button, and this thing looks like the Transformer movie. The roof starts tucking in, things start turning, and then the thing disappears, and now he's in a convertible. I mean, it was that fast, but it was beautiful. It was all timed. It's a Mercedes. It was great. So I'm standing there watching him, and he nods his head, and he says, hey, young fella. I like that because I got a lot of gray hair. So I'm 54, so he had to be in his 80s. And I go, hey, how you doing? Thanks for your service. He goes, I'm doing great. He goes, we got some great weather. And I said, look, I don't know if this is available or not, but if you don't have a son to to put in your will and leave that car to, I'm available. And he laughed and he leaned against the car and he says, yeah, look at that. I said, that's beautiful.
Yeah, anybody listening out there, Jason is available for adoption, but I do know his father, who was a good dad.
He's a good dude.
I enjoy his conversations too, but
Yeah.
go on, Jason.
All right. So, the point is, I said to him, I said, hey, I need to have a conversation with you to know what you did differently and how you think differently in order to have that.
Well, I deal with that generation all the time, and one thing that stands out more than any other thing is that attitude of gratitude. How many times do you hear those guys start off with, I woke up today and I'm thank God for another day, I'm still alive.
Yes. And my point is this, is
and willing to work.
people are willing to do something different in order to have a different result. If you do the same thing physically, spiritually, and financially over and over again, and it isn't giving you the results you want, something's broke. Something's not right in your belief system and in your thinking. And you probably need to sit down with someone and walk through that.
I think that's why we're here. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you look at how the context of the church is built, iron sharpens iron, all these different body parts, and for what? To encourage and to help build up. And that is a community. I mean, that's why we have the old with the young. That's why we have all these different experiences, because we're not always on the up all the time. No, we're down. We need those words of encouragement. We need those extra thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I gave you the story about the Mercedes, and I meant what I said. I said, you had to think and do something different in order to get that than how I've been told to think and what I've been told to do. And it isn't about the Mercedes. It's about what he became. The Mercedes is a byproduct of what he did in his journey in order to obtain it. Now you can apply that to anything you want in your life. Okay, Jesus was on earth raising the dead, healing leopards, all kinds of miracles, challenging the current status quo thinking of the day. He turned it upside down, completely upside down and inside out. And what did he say? All these things you've seen me do, you can do, and more. So what stops us? Thinking, connecting, growing, opening up our hand and receiving something new.
Well, let's talk about some blockers. Laziness. How do you remove laziness from the equation? It's like a cancer.
I'm going to take a drink of this coffee. You give me an example, and then I'll give you one.
Okay. All right. Well, I've gotten pretty comfortable over the years, doing as little as possible, making excuses daily, and separating myself from anybody I think is going to hold me accountable. And I'm just going to keep telling myself different things to survive. Laziness at the root is my cancer. How do I remove it?
Self-discipline.
How do I get that?
Put people in your life who will hold you accountable.
But I'm trying to remove those people.
Then you're choosing to be lazy.
I look at it like I'm comfortable in my situation.
Then you're making excuses. You either want to be lazy or you don't.
Well, I'm just, it's how I'm built, It's like I get a drinking problem and I'm Irish. I get a temper problem and I'm Italian. It's just, that's how I'm born.
That's how you're programmed.
I think you got me on that one.
Because I guess what you're saying is God made a mistake. He made you an alcoholic. He made you hot-headed. He made you lazy. I guess he failed with your mold. Let's hope it broke and he didn't make anybody else that way.
Yeah, it's not my fault, see?
No. You got to find somebody to blame, right?
Absolutely.
And isn't that sad that even as adults, not young people, we buy into that thinking? My business failed because of COVID. No, it didn't. Your business failed because you chose to think about COVID a certain way.
Well, flip the script. I just gave you every reason why I cannot be successful. And I don't mean just financially successful. I think success is doing the best thing with what you have. So flip the script. Give me everything I said as a negative in the reverse. In other words, I am strong because I work out. I am this because I put forth the effort. Jason, I just want to see what is in that head and give it a good flow.
You might be afraid what comes out.
That's
I might
okay.
be afraid of
Go for
what
it.
comes
Go
out.
for it.
No, so look, you gave a great example. You'll pay, my wife and I, who's sitting here, and I hope your audience can see how beautiful she is. I'm just kidding. She's beautiful,
No,
but I mean, we got no
you're
camera.
Not kidding. Go for it, my man.
Okay. We pay $50 a month for a gym membership. Okay. There was a time we worked out more than we do now, but let's not go there. Okay. We pay for a gym membership to make our body temple healthier and better, right? We go to classes to get a diploma, okay, that we hang on the wall that gets us a career opportunity to create an income we want, okay? How many of us buy a book that will challenge us to grow personally in our personal growth and development? My wife and I just finished a 1-year course that we did together. We consistently made it through. We weren't perfect. We didn't hit it every night. We didn't stick to the schedule that we started out with, but we finished the course. We have a notebook, each of us, full of notes of what we were learning from that course, called Developing Your Empowered Life, by our mentors, Paul Martinelli and Roddy Galbraith. Okay? We took that course. I guarantee you, some of the conversations we've had over the year in our life, we would have never had we not taken that course and started creating together the purpose we want to fulfill with our life that we believe is given to us by God. And we're willing to do the work. Now, if we can go to the gym 3 or 4 days a week and spend $50 a month on a membership, why couldn't we buy a book for $50 and once a week watch a video for an hour that challenges our thinking, that challenges us to believe there is a bigger purpose of why we're here and what we're to accomplish? People all the time, I don't have the money. I'll give you a perfect example. March 6th, I'm doing a leadership development course right down the street. It's for 5 weeks, okay? And we're going to study leadership and how to build it into our lives and what leadership really looks like and what influence looks like and how it starts in the home. And then we grow it into the primary love relationships of our life. And then we grow it into the community. And then that influence impacts people, okay? There's an investment to that course. There's a workbook. It's $15. I know people who spend $15 a week on poison that they put in their mouth, that they put into their body. And I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about junk food. I'm talking about the drive-thru at Burger King. I'm talking about the super big drink at Starbucks with extra whipped cream and gooey sauce all over it. Okay? My point is this. You have a choice to make. You're not broke. You could choose to put the money into a 5-week course and come out better from it. And if you didn't, you can always go back to Starbucks and have extra whipped cream and feel better about yourself.
No, I can see Jason's definitely hitting that point home because he actually started with that point, and I can see it blows your mind. Why anybody would not want to invest in building that mental muscle and improving their life and to have true fulfillment.
All that we achieve or fail to achieve is the direct result of our thinking. My question to you is, who are you allowing to influence your thinking? I mean, we are living in a test tube right now. It's like the world has become a giant laboratory to see how evil can force us to submit and surrender our God-given right to think.
Well, I think that is the ultimate end game. I think when we get a chance to meet our Maker, I think this whole earth process, because absolutely, without a doubt, you read the scriptures, it says that, this whole plan for mankind, I mean, Jesus Christ was supposed to be the sacrifice before the foundation of the world. So they had this baby mapped out completely in their supreme intellect, and it comes down to beginning of mankind history, when Adam and Eve were sent out of the garden. And basically the flaming sword went up and God said, you know what? Go have your own education systems. Go start your own religions. Go ahead and try to live life on that message, that lie that was sold to them. And that is, if you take of this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will be like God. Essentially saying that, yeah, you can be like God's now, a cheap substitute. Be God's now and decide for yourself what is good and evil, and we have nothing but thousands of years of mankind's history to show us, can we truly have happiness, cooperation, true peace, and fulfillment without God a part of that equation? And I think we all come to that answer of no. And by the way, throw in a complete super genius who's been alive for who knows how long. Did God create a devil? No, he created Lucifer, this beautiful angelic being, and put him in a service role of helping other angels develop, because angels were born before mankind. And I think that's why we're in the flesh, because, again, the power of choice they absolutely had. And somehow in the spiritual realm, when you make a decision, when you rebel against your maker, because they knew exactly who God was, because they were at his throne. And they jump for joy. They leap for joy at the creation of the earth. And it talks about in the Bible the series of events on this planet. And first, the angelics, or the angels, actually were in charge of this planet. Then came mankind. And it was an opportunity for us to learn all these lessons in a short period of time. When I think about the human body, this whole purpose going on, how incredible that design is. That we can build character in such a short period of time. It is mentioned that our life is even but a vapor, that our struggles are not worthy to be compared what God has in store for everybody, and that we get building blocks for success in his inspired word of mindsets. And the scripture that comes to my mind is, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that this produces faith. Again, all about character. It's all about that perspective. So without a doubt, Jason, you talked about it all begins in the mind. It starts with thought, without a doubt. And what a beautiful experience we're all going through. And ultimately, we can all see that without God, none of it truly is successful.
That's very powerful. What you just said is very powerful. And you answered your own question that you asked in the beginning of this, when people say to you, if there's a just God, how can these things happen? So I'm going to come at that from a little bit of an angle. I just want to share this with you. I'm so delighted that my faith in God, my awareness of how God works in my life, is that he's not a puppet master. He's not in heaven with his fingers out with strings on Jason's life and dangling me around like a puppet. And saying, now I'm going to have something bad to happen to Jason. Now I'll have something good. I'm going to torment him, and so on and so on and so on. This is how people have been programmed to think about God, right? But what God said to Jason was, you have free will. You can choose me, or you can reject me. The rain falls on the just and unjust. The sun rises and sets on the just and unjust. So when something that's perceived to be negative that happens in someone's life, the loss of a loved one, someone struggling with addiction, and the list goes on. Those are opportunities for someone to see God. Those are opportunities for someone to connect with God. You can have adversity in your life that can help define you spiritually, depending on how you think about it.
I see resistance is necessary for building muscle, for building character, the same principle. If you want to get stronger, you got to keep adding on the weight. Otherwise, you're going to stay at a certain point. So, our struggles, our hardships, discomfort, is it necessary for growth? Jason, you have to say,
yes.
Absolutely, my man. Absolutely. Yes. I know who a puppet master is. Not God. No. He wants free, independent children of his. Satan, Lucifer, in his rebellion became the devil. And absolutely, he is the puppet master. He's the God of this world. So not only do we have to overcome self, we have to overcome that guy and all of his influence. And I like how you say the programming. And I think there are those that are aware of what they were doing. And I think there are those that don't, that don't. And I mean in an evil context. But here we are. The mission is just as powerful as it was thousands of years ago, just as special for Adam as it is special for us. The never-ending process of growth and learning and becoming better and better. Jason.
You know, it's sad to say, but there's so much in our local communities today, in our places of worship, in our organizations that we belong to, clubs, so on and so forth, where it's all about competition. It's all about limitation. It's all about scarcity. When I work with someone who wants to speak into my life, whether it's in the place of worship, whether it's in a place of business, this is my litmus test. Are they equipping me and empowering me and releasing me to live into my purpose and connecting with me to God, connecting me to God? Or are they putting their arms around me and saying, me, mine, and I? We're in the business of equipping people, empowering people, building people to walk into their purpose and to find what that purpose is. It's a journey. It grows and develops as you grow and develop, and you walk into your awareness and you receive it. So many times, poor leadership is all about narcissism. It's all about mine. You're my widget. I need you here.
Yeah, I've experienced that. I've had great mentors in my life, and I've also had the awesome opportunity of having a mentor that wanted to be the middleman. It's like a new concept I'm working on, the middleman. You can find him in any organization. You can find it anywhere. That guy that wants to be the go-between of your relationship to the Almighty God at whatever level that is, from extreme standpoint or not. But absolutely, for selfish person. And I think our job, again, as it being critical thinkers, is to, know them by their fruits, trust but verify, without a doubt. Don't just let any guy lead you. You got to know what he's about, and you got to recognize that it's all about you standing on your own 2 feet, that they are getting you to a point where those wings can spread and you are doing the flying.
You asked me earlier about young people. The age is irrelevant because sometimes we work with people who are much older, okay, and have already had a lot of journey in their life, okay? I'm a firm believer in this. You were created a perfect being. God did not make a mistake. You're imperfectly programmed. I'm not talking about sin nature and not sin nature. That's not what I'm talking about. Think about this for a minute, okay? The truth is inside of you. Your purpose, your dreams of what you need to accomplish in life is inside of you. I won't tell you what it is. I'll just walk with you as you find it.
Go the extra mile.
Why not?
I like that, my man. I like that.
Why not? I mean, has anybody that's ever accomplished anything significant spiritually, financially, in the corporate world ever done it alone?
Actually, the scriptures are full with the Alcohol Anonymous is right next door. You know what I learned from that group? Because I do. I'm always talking to the bum on the street or the billionaire that comes in, whatever. I'm here to learn. And what I've noticed, not only they, but any organization thrives on a principle of support structure. That's all biblical. The community thrives with what? Everybody holding themselves accountable, holding others accountable, but having a standard greater than anybody's mind, a godly standard. Because we talked about, when things work, I look at this own country. How strong was America? And what was the factor? No, they relied upon God. There was integrity. There was a morality. We had a guest on the show, Bruce Duncan. Enjoy him very much. There's a famous quote given. The French government sent over delegates in this country to find out the source of our strength. They went all across the land, and this is what they reported back. America is great because America is good. When America ceases to be good, it ceases to be great. And only one person can define that, not you, not me, not anybody. It has to be the guy that can define good and define evil, and that's our Creator. And when we've put those principles into practice, because that's what it was, we thrived. And any country that takes away from integrity and those principles, eventually they die on the vine. They're either conquered or great hardship hits that land, and then we begin that cycle over again where we have a value in something greater than ourselves. We're grateful, we're willing to work because we realize everything that we have to lose. And I don't want to see that country in that position, but I'm a realist. I know history. There's only two factors. I just said it as far as what that reset is. And having good leaders, yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're going to benefit from that. But again, it comes down to each of us doing the best job that we can. And that's hardship and suffering, though. Those are the factors. That's everything in history. That's what I see. So, Jason, we're going to go ahead and wrap this puppy up. Definitely want you back on again because really this is a warm-up. We're getting actually to know each other better and better. We're making more and more connections. Like we talked about, that's going to create an energy, a stronger relationship, which means better thoughts, and we're going to build even more incredible things. And with everybody listening, we're looking to build incredible things with you because we're looking to build an incredible community. Absolutely possible. If you don't see that yet, Jason's got some night vision goggles. You just lay on your back and you will see these beautiful stars, how bright the city can truly shine. So with the question, Jason, I always ask, what is that main message for the youth today that you have? You've touched on a lot of subjects. Let's go ahead and say, in a nutshell, wrap it up. What is that main message that you have for anyone to truly be encouraged, Jason?
You need to take the time to know who you are and whose you are. You were divinely created for a purpose that only you can fulfill. And it's not an easy journey, but it is a very fulfilling journey. Walk towards it, define it, and grow.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Stay tuned for more. And again, make it a great day.